Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Morning Cafe, and I want us to shift gears and talk matters water. Of course, as you can see in the background, Kenya's hidden water crisis. Why groundwater governance matters right now more than ever. And to help me with this conversation, I have geologist Patrick Murunga. He's the acting CEO, Regional Center on Groundwater Resource Education Training and, of course, Research. Karibu sana to studio.
Asante sana.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is quite a mouthful. Regional Center on Groundwater Resource Education Training and Research. What do you guys do there?
Thank you for having me. We are the Regional Center on Groundwater Resources. We are a state agency within the Ministry of Water. One of the 18 agencies that help the ministry to deliver its mandate. Our primary function is to conduct research on matters groundwater systems, aquifers, and also do capacity building to train the professionals, even the local people, the Wanjiku, and also the policymakers when it comes to matters groundwater resources. Yes.
So when you talk about training the Wanjikus, what are you training them about?
Yes, our primary role is actually to increase knowledge to the people. That means we would like people to be more aware of groundwater resources. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities that exist when it comes to groundwater resources? So we go out there and engage with them, increase their knowledge about what it is that they need to know in order for them to help us protect groundwater resources and also increase groundwater availability. So everybody has a role to play. The Wanjikus have a role to play because they are the users, but we also have the duty bearers, the people in between, and at the top we also have the policymakers who need the right information based in science to be able to make informed choices for our country.
All right, great. We've set the pace for this conversation, but I want to take you back before we came live. We were talking about geologists, and it's a long time since I had the term, geologist back then. But you mentioned something that you're usually behind the scenes. Then what are you doing behind the scenes? Why don't we give you guys so much prominence? Because I think if you're looking at, the status of the earth, which of course, if you'd correct me if I'm wrong, that is what you do according to my own understanding. But then why are you operating behind the scenes?
Well, we don't actually operate behind the scenes, but most of our geological issues are not brought to the fore. That is what I meant. Geology is a very important discipline, and this country has a lot of geological resources, from water to minerals and others. And it's just that in our country, as opposed to other countries, our geological resources are not given the right attention. We are slightly behind in terms of bringing the issues, because this country is asset rich when it comes to geological resources. But the country is not prioritizing. That is what I meant. Yes.
So by the country not prioritizing issues of geology, what does that do to when you're looking at issues like water now? You're talking about groundwater, and we're not giving geologists that much attention as we should. Then what does that do to the possibility of us tapping into the resources that we could get from geologists?
Thank you. If we do not pay attention to our geological resources and bringing things to the fore, we lose out on opportunities. Good example is groundwater, which is our area of expertise. If we do not give attention to groundwater resources, and what is happening, we end up missing opportunities of developing these resources properly. So number one, for instance, in Nairobi, our groundwater utilization has been going up by the year. So the water table has historically been going down. And that therefore means we are not doing enough in terms of looking at how to recharge, so that we match recharge, which is how water gets into this groundwater material, and how much we are abstracting from the resources. So there is need that in this country particularly, and Nairobi for instance, there's something we call as groundwater subsidence, which means that we are utilizing more, we are abstracting more groundwater than natural mechanisms of recharge would allow us. And therefore we risk making the resource not sustainable to meet our socioeconomic development needs.
Yeah. So how will you explain to, of course, our viewer this morning, the relationship between surface water and groundwater? How different are they?
Yes, surface water is the water that you would see in our rivers, in our lakes. You would see with your naked eyes. But groundwater is a hidden resource. It is covered with geological material, be it soil, sand, rocks. So it is down there, we do not get to see it. And that brings about a challenge that most of us, when we are developing plans to utilize our water resources, we usually run to surface water because we can see and relate to it and develop it quickly. But for groundwater resources, because it's hidden, we miss out the opportunity. And there are two things. Number one, when we do not know that it is there, we may make plans that would jeopardize the resource, pollute it. And sometimes when it is there and we don't know, we end up putting our money in infrastructure to bring water from far away when there's a resource nearby. So that is the two, that you could develop your groundwater resource by putting maybe, because you don't know it's there, you put maybe something like a landfill, and you end up contaminating the groundwater resources. But if it's there and you don't know, again, you might miss out the opportunity and go far away to look for the water to bring to serve the community or the region that you're serving. So that is the problem that we have. And it is a problem because you need science to be able to know where this groundwater is, where it's being recharged from. Because if you have your groundwater here, but the recharge point is not here, it is being recharged far away. But that far away point where it's being recharged, maybe there's some development. Someone is doing roads, someone is doing buildings of pavements, and therefore they are reducing the area of recharge for your groundwater resources. So the gap is that we don't have a lot of information based in science that will tell us where the groundwater resources are and what we really need to do in order to protect and properly develop these resources for the benefit of our country.
And of course, you'll be telling us more about that. But where have you established the existence of groundwater in the country as of, say, 2025?
Again?
You said groundwater in specific areas in the country, which is hidden, as is the topic of this conversation. You don't know much about it. Then from where you said, which areas have you established that this groundwater exists, but the country is not tapping into these areas?
So when it comes to groundwater, we have what we call as aquifers. Basically, these are geologic material, sand, soil, rocks. Within the matrix, there are voids or spaces which store water. So an aquifer is basically just a geologic material that stores water and also allows water to be transmitted from one point to another. Now, we have been able to map out some of these aquifers in the country. We have some like Merti in northeastern, we have Nairobi Aquifer System, we have the Elgon Transboundary Aquifer, we have Kilimanjaro. There are many aquifers that have been mapped. And this is an ongoing work. We continue to refine our maps to be able to to delineate how far these aquifers go. So there is a lot of them that have been identified, and the work is going on to identify more.
Great. And you told us more about groundwater when you're differentiating with the surface water, what they really are. But when we look at groundwater governance, now we're talking about governance coming in. Then what do you mean by groundwater governance? And when you talk about it really matters now more than ever, why would you say that is the case in 2025?
Thank you. That's a very good question. Now, groundwater governance in Kenya is actually something very dear to us because this country has been categorized as a water scarce country. What that means is that if you look at all our water resources, surface and ground, if we are to sum up all our water resources and divide that resource by our entire population, we are about 50-something million now, the per capita, that is the water allocated to every individual, would be less than 500 cubic meters per year per person. Now that is way below the established standard by the United Nations. The United Nations recommends that for a country that is doing very well when it comes to matters of managing their water resources, that number should be above 1,000. So for us, it is below. But there is what can be done. Now that is bringing everybody, all the stakeholders together to make them aware of the opportunities and the challenges that presents. So for instance, the duty bearers from the policymakers to the agencies responsible for managing our water resources and the users. And don't forget that we have in between the agencies that manage these water resources on our behalf, and the Ministry of Water has 18 of them. They have a particular role in ensuring that our situation of our per capita being less than 100 can be improved by just doing activities that will ensure that we retain most of the water, because most of it is lost to the ocean, a lot of it is lost through evaporation. But there are activities and programs that we can initiate to ensure that we really improve our numbers when it comes to our reserves in water resources.
And we're looking at water, and of course water is life. If we have, you know, boreholes, which right now a lot of people are trying to invest in to just be as a savior for, you know, water sources, if that's the correct term to use. But then why is water still such a big issue for Kenya?
Yes, when it comes to groundwater resources, because it's hidden, sometimes we put money, and it's very capital intensive to do a borehole in Kenya. You need about plus 3 million shillings to be able to do a well. And sometimes when you do these wells, you end up with what we call as dry boreholes, which means there is no water in these wells. Also, there are wells that were done, say, a few years back, and with time you realize that those wells become dry. That means that the water table has gone below these wells. And a good example is in Nairobi. In the early 70s, you would drill up to about just 80 meters and you get your water. But today, because of the obstruction, almost every building in Nairobi, the major buildings, has a well. And everybody is pumping out from this aquifer, the Nairobi aquifer system. And therefore, the water table is gradually going down. And that brings about the issue that I talked earlier about, what we call as groundwater subsidence. Because now, when you make the water table go down, the voids below that will reduce significantly because of the weight of the overburden the buildings. And therefore, there is a gradual lowering of the material, all the entire material, the overburden goes down together with the void spaces. And during the rains, when the water comes back, it's not possible for you to recover the lost space because it is reduced. And that is our capacity, our storage capacity is affected even when the rains come. And so this issue of us using groundwater more and not thinking so much about how this is recharged naturally or whether we can intervene with artificial mechanisms of recharge is something that should actually be discussed at all levels.
Great. And what do you see the biggest weakness today in the implementation of groundwater governance? I know there's Water Act, which of course gives surface water more prominence as compared to groundwater. Then where do you see the gaps in terms of implementation?
The gap has been on financing groundwater development projects. You need money to be able to do this, and our country has many priorities. So when it comes to groundwater, not a lot of focus has been given to it, because in other areas it's easy for people to get water from the rivers, from the lakes. But in a larger portion of our country, 23 counties are considered as arid and semi-arid. And if you look at that, the number is less than half, but if you look at the sheer size of these counties, they account for more than half of our country. These counties, the 23 of them, do not have an alternative because they don't have a lot of surface water sources, no rivers, no lakes. But they still need water to be able to do their socioeconomic activities. And therefore, we really need people to come together and leverage on private financing and bring about development partners. I'm happy about like one of the projects that we are doing at the Ministry of Water is called the Horn of Africa Groundwater for Resilience Program, which is targeting the Horn, an area that suffers a lot of problems when it comes to water resources, and therefore we are actually focusing on groundwater. How do we recharge the groundwater? How do we develop the water?
So what are you doing now as a ministry? And, you know, and this was to come at the very tail end, because I was writing it down. What are you doing as a ministry to just make groundwater, you know, more prominent and more safe and secure for Kenyans?
So there have been a number of initiatives by the ministry and the agencies involved in trying to address the gaps. One, beginning with the legal instruments, they establish the enabling environment for all players to have a role. So we have had a long journey of progressive reviews of the laws that affect water. So we began with the Cap 372 of the Water Act. That was before the year 2002. And after the year 2002, we enacted the Water Act 2002, which was actually very progressive, because before it was the Ministry of Water doing everything. But after 2002, we were able to allocate responsibilities for every agency, so that the ministry is only left with supervision and coordination. But then all the other agencies were given a role. You do this, you do that. But then fast forward, we promulgated our constitution, and that required that we align the Water Act 2002 to the realities of the Constitution of Kenya. And therefore, in 2016, we made reviews and had the Water Act 2016. But now, again, we are looking at the gaps, because it's good to be very dynamic, to change with. So right now, we are thinking of how do we leverage on private financing to be able to bring investors and give them the assurance and comfort that if they are to invest their money after a certain period of time, of course not 2-3 years, but maybe 10-20 years, they can be able to recoup the investment. So the PPP is being unloaded, and many other things that would enable us to be able to conserve our water resources are in plan.
So what will be the potential result of that PPP if the investor were to come in and partner with, you know, the country to make water accessible? Then what will be the impact of that in the long term?
In the long term, we will have a secure future, because we are not just looking at water for our immediate needs now, but also looking at the future. The government came up with a plan to construct 100 dams, and that requires a lot of money. So we have to bring in the private people and tell them, look, help us do these dams. In the long run, we'll be able to sell this water, so there is bulk water that is generated from these dams and sold, because our people are ready and willing to pay for the service, but we have to bring that service to their doorstep. So whether the water is from the ground or it is from these dams, we really need to leverage on private financing so that we are able to develop these resources and deliver water to Wanjiku.
And you know, pollution is a big concern, and this is something that we as Kenyans don't know much about. And when you're talking about groundwater, what would you say that it's, you know, some of the human activities that we do as Kenyans that most of the time affect this groundwater and could be harmful to the people?
That's a good question. If you look at groundwater is susceptible to contamination or pollution, as you have just said. There are quite a number of things that we do innocently because we're interested in our profits. So for instance, in Nairobi, all of us have seen Nairobi River and how it looks. It is really not in the, we do not have fish, we do not have microorganisms in the river. Because of our activities, because we want to get some profit through what we do in industry. So in Nairobi, we are contaminating because we are trying to do manufacturing. And sometimes people are not playing by the book. The rules are there, but enforcement is a bit laxed, that we are not able to follow up and say that this person is the one responsible for contaminating the resources. Because when you contaminate surface water, you are also, by extension, contaminating groundwater resources, because all these three, water in the air, water on the surface, and water in the ground, they are interconnected. So we need to have an integrated approach, what we call as the integrated water resources management approach, ensuring that all the players, all the users, understand that if we do not take good care of our water, then we'll end up contaminating. And I know of other countries that have done very well by being very strategic. Good example is the Danish people. In Denmark, The law is that drinking water is from the ground. You cannot develop surface water for drinking. And that you are not allowed by law in that country to treat groundwater. So that is very deliberate, because everybody will now know that this is our drinking water. We cannot allow anyone to contaminate it. So they were very strategic in making that. In our country, we develop water for drinking from any source. And therefore, sometimes when this source is contaminated, people go to the alternative source.
So as we come to the tail end of this conversation, Patrick, what would you want Kenyans to know this morning about, groundwater, that sometimes you see the misconceptions that you've encountered around groundwater and groundwater governance and, the information? What you'd want us to take away this morning?
The misconception is that people think that groundwater is everywhere. Yes, groundwater is fairly distributed as opposed to surface water. But there are places you'd go and you drill and there's no groundwater. And therefore, we really need to map out our groundwater resources. Where are our aquifers? And how big are our aquifers? And what are the water quality concerns of these aquifers? And also, how are these aquifers recharged? Where do they get the water from? So that where we recharge them from becomes protected zones. So that we do not allow people to play with our resources. We need to begin looking at groundwater just as we look at oil, just as we look at gold. It is a resource that is even far more important. It is said that in future people will begin to fight, and countries will fight over water resources. So in this country, because our water resources are diminishing, we need to become very deliberate in ensuring that we protect these resources, and everybody, from the users to the duty bearers to the policy makers, begins to play an active role in safeguarding our water resources.
And finally, speak to us about the Regional Center on Groundwater Resources Education Training and Research Strategic Plan 2023-2027. What does it seek to achieve?
Thank you so much. We are launching tomorrow our strategic plan 2023-2024 of our organization, the Regional Center on Groundwater Resources, at a local hotel in Nairobi. And we are bringing together the stakeholders, not just from the Ministry of Water, but from across board, all the partners that we have been working with and that we wish to work with, to tell them about the journey that we need to have in order to have these groundwater resources brought to the fore. So we have key result areas that we will be sharing with them at that event, to tell them about the deliberate actions that our agency and the entire ministry needs to support in order to ensure that groundwater resources are given the due attention that they require.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick, for making time for us to have this conversation. Very timely, and of course I know we've learned something about groundwater and how it's really crucial in this day and age for us to tap into that investment. Is it an investment?
Yes, it is.
It is. Asante sana. That's geologist Patrick Murunga, Acting CEO, Regional Center on Groundwater Resource Education, Training and Research, speaking to us this morning about Kenya's hidden water crisis and why groundwater governance matters more than ever. We've come to the end of this segment. You're watching Morning Cafe. My name is Anne Odida. Good morning.